So I snuck into the lot, Warner Brothers, and I went and planted myself down on the couch in the casting director's office. And they said, well, you don't have an appointment. And I said, well, yeah, but I need to see Robert Redford, and I'm not leaving until I see Robert Redford. And Penny came out and said, Gary, don't do this. You're gonna have to go, or I'm gonna have to get somebody to take you out of here.
Tracking through your youth, you had some influences, pivotal people in your life. They were kind of nexus moments. Barb Patterson, I think, or Mrs. Barbara Patterson, you mentioned. Officer Rash, I think, was one of them that you also mentioned. Those stood out to me because kind of reading those moments, I was like, if those individuals don't act the way they do in those moments, we don't get this version of Gary Sinise. And that, looking back, I thought those were special moments.
Especially Barbara Patterson. She was the drama teacher at my high school, and she's the one who encouraged me to audition for my first play, West Side Story, and that's why I ended up doing theater. And, you know, I mean, I can't say that if she hadn't kind of stumbled down the hallway and told me to audition that I wouldn't have found my way to the theater.
Right, that's true.
But you know, there's also something to be said for her coming down and you know, me giving her credit for getting me involved.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have done it. Maybe I would have, but she was the one who said, "Come audition," you know.
Yeah.
And me and a couple of the other buddies that I was hanging out with, who I was playing in a band with, we went and auditioned. One of them got in, and I got into the play too. So two of us got into the play. That was one of those moments that set the stage for a massive amount of work to come.
Yeah.
Started a theater after that. That's where Steppenwolf came from.
Absolutely.
You know, I went into the movie business and TV business. You know, in fact, you mentioned this book, Grateful American. When I talk about her in the book, there's a great story. When the book came out, I went on a 2-week round the country promotional tour about it. And we came here to Nashville, and she was living in Nashville. And I came here to do some press, and I called her up, and in fact, I went on the Mike Huckabee show and talked about the book, and then went over and picked her up and took her out to dinner afterwards.
That's amazing.
And I'm driving with her in the car, just the two of us in the backseat of the car, and I get a call saying the book was number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm sitting here with the teacher that got me into acting. I could barely read or write when she met me. I was a failing student in school, but I was excelling at the theater stuff because of her, and failing everything else because I just was a bad student. And here I am, I'm sitting with her, who remembers way back when I could barely read or write.
Yeah.
And I'm telling her that I wrote a book that's on the New York Times bestseller list. It was a perfect moment to be told that, to be sitting with her, who, you know, started me in the acting business, and you know, I give her a lot of credit for that.
I think the contrast to, you know, maybe being in a bit of trouble, or you mentioned reading and writing, you know, being difficult or being a bad student. I think the contrast to that, at least by my reading, was when you took over as AD for Steppenwolf. You were focused, hard worker, disciplined, expected a lot from your crew. To me, those were just contrasting moments.
You know, so many of my pals that were in the early days of Steppenwolf, they were very well read, and you know, could tell you who Stanislavski was and all this stuff. What I lacked in that kind of knowledge, I made up for in just sort of kind of tunnel vision.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you know, we had a lot of wonderful personalities and different types of folks that were involved in Steppenwolf in the beginning, and really smart folks. I was more of a kind of, you see the objective down there and you take the hill, you charge in and get it done.
Yeah.
I think some of that came from kind of my early days. Even though I wasn't a good student, my dad was gone a lot. He was a film editor, so he was downtown, and he would work late, and he was gone a lot. And my mom was taking care of her sister and her mom and my brother and my sister and whatnot, and I just was kind of out, kind of figuring stuff out on my own.
Yeah.
So I taught myself how to play guitar, and I formed a band. I was, loved baseball, and so I put the kids in the neighborhood together to make a baseball team. And, I just had sort of, I guess I just had to kind of figure it out. And so going into Steppenwolf, I think I just kind of brought some of that to it. Like,
Yeah.
if it's going to get done, we have to do it ourselves, and somebody's got to lead. So I'll do it. We were undisciplined, but we were
Controlled chaos.
in the beginning because we were kids.
Yeah, that's true.
But we had a passionate desire to kind of do plays. We wanted to act, and we wanted to be in shows, and we liked doing it. And now I'm out of high school.
Yep.
I don't have a drama teacher telling me what to do, but I still want to do that.
Yeah.
So we had to start figuring out how to do it ourselves. I wasn't going to go to college. I thought about trying to get into an acting school or something, but high school academics was always really tough for me. So the thought of kind of going through that again, I didn't want to. But I still wanted to do plays. I just loved doing that. And so as soon as I graduated from high school, we found a little church. And my parents actually knew the architects of this one local church. And they had a big space in the middle. And I asked them if we could use it to put on a play. And they said, yeah. So we started doing that. And then there was another one. And then there was another one. Then we went into a basement of a Catholic school, and we built a theater in there. And we started doing plays in there. Nobody was making any money at it. We all had extra jobs. We were all in our early 20s in those early days. So everybody had a job, I was working on a loading dock at Neiman Marcus, just unpacking boxes, that kind of thing. And then we'd go to the theater at night and do our plays at night. Yeah. Then we go to work in the day. But the great thing about it is we had our own thing. It was our own thing. We were,
ownership.
9 kids in a basement
Yeah.
putting on a play together. And we put up lights and built platforms for the seating, and we did all of that. And we had an 88-seat theater in the beginning in the basement of this closed-down Catholic school in Highland Park, Illinois. And that's where Steppenwolf really launched. Eventually, we moved into the city, but we were in a suburb, isolated, 9 folks in a basement doing our plays.
Yeah.
And, this is Malkovich and me and Laurie Metcalf, Joan Allen, Terry Kinney, Jeff Perry, some really good folks. My wife, Moira, that's where we met. And, we were all doing plays together, and, it turned into something that's lasted for 50 years.
That's incredible. The Steppenwolf Theatre in its current incarnation, ongoing, larger theater, still has the Veteran Tuesday. Do they still do that?
They still do a Vets Night. What we started after the Tuesdays for the play Tracers that I did, we created something called Vets Night. And this goes back 40 years now, where we would do the final dress rehearsal for each play. We would invite an audience, and it would be an audience of veterans to come in and see the show, be the first audience.
Right.
And that started because of my play Tracers.
So special.
And it's lasted all these years, and now my foundation actually sponsors it at Steppenwolf. pay for a meal for all the veterans to come in, have a free meal. We pay for it. We make a donation to the theater. They get the food. It's sponsored by the Gary Sinise Foundation. So, and those roots go all the way back to 1984.
That's incredible. Just a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds probably didn't know they were starting that at the time, but it's resonated forward.
No, yeah. And if you go to Steppenwolf now, it's a giant building.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a giant institution there. It has an international reputation. We've taken our shows all over the world. We have a tremendous group of actors that have come out of Steppenwolf over the years. It's the board of directors has had to raise a lot of money to just build a new edition that was, opened just within the last 2 or 3 years. Brand new theater in the round there. I'm not really actively involved with it the way I used to be for like the first 25, 27 years of Steppenwolf's existence. I was very active with it. But after September 11th, 2001, things changed. The last play I did was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It closed July 29th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
Just 6 weeks before the attacks of September 11th. And I haven't done a play since.
Wow.
Life changed at that point.
There was a brief passage about Robert Redford and sitting and waiting in a waiting room and saying, "I'm here to see Robert Redford." That made me laugh when I read that in the book.
So I grew up in Highland Park, Illinois. It's on the north shore of Chicago. North shore, it's Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Right next door is a town called Lake Forest. And there was a book that was written called Ordinary People. Mm-hmm. And Robert Redford was going to direct Ordinary People. And Ordinary People took place right there on the North Shore in Lake Forest, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And it's about a young kid who's going through some, tough stuff. And I thought I was the young kid. I have to play that part. And I grew up there. I know, have to play that part. I got an audition for it. But they didn't call me back. You usually do an audition, then they call you back. They weed out everybody. Then they call back a certain number. They see them again. They narrow it down. It keeps shrinking and shrinking until you get to that one actor who's going to play the part. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get called back. And I thought, what the hell? This is my part. I grew up there. It's Ordinary People. I am ordinary. So... I have to get in there. I have to get back. I have to see Robert Redford. So I snuck into the lot, Warner Brothers, and I went and planted myself down on the couch in the casting director's office and said, I need to see Robert Redford. And they said, well, you don't have an appointment. And I said, well, yeah, but I need to see Robert Redford. I'm not leaving until I see Robert Redford. And the assistant went and got the casting director. Her name was Penny Perry, I remember. And Penny came out and said, Gary, don't do this. I need to see Robert Redford. This is my part. Don't do this. You're going to have to go, or I'm going to have to get somebody to take you out of here. And I begged and I pleaded, and I wasn't going to be able to see Robert Redford. And so they escorted me kind of to the door and said, go now. And I, very depressed and dejected, kind of found my way out. And the ironic thing is, years later, after I started doing well, and Steppenwolf started taking plays to New York, and we started, being sort of the talk of the town.
Right.
I was offered a directing deal at Columbia Pictures, and the Columbia offices happened to be on the Warner Brothers lot.
Same lot?
So yeah, same lot. So years later, I ended up having a directing deal with my own office, my own assistant, very near where I was kicked out of Penny Perry's office.
I love that symmetry. I love that. I mean, it's reminiscent of telling Barbara, you know, you have a New York Times bestseller after, you know.
Yeah.
I love that story when I read that. I thought that was, and you mentioned earlier, you were kind of, you're singularly focused. When it's time to go, you go. And I think that was that personality trait.
I tried. You know, I heard, you know, I thought, I remember hearing those stories about Spielberg.
Yeah.
You know, sneaking into the Universal lot and pretending he was in an office. You know, all of a sudden he turns into Spielberg. You know, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sneak out of that office and sneak into the lot, and I'm going to tell him I got to. But I got chucked out.
Speaking of Spielberg, I was talking to our photographer Jenna about this earlier. After Of Mice and Men, I think you sat with Steven and his wife, and you watched Of Mice and Men together.
Yes.
In his private theater, I think.
I had directed and acted in Of Mice and Men.
Right.
So that was kind of like a little calling card. I had acted in a few movies, and then this is the early 90s. I had done The Grapes of Wrath on Broadway. I got the rights to do Of Mice and Men because I was very friendly with Elaine Steinbeck, who controlled the rights to all John Steinbeck's material. Incredible. She was his wife. Yeah. So I started working on the script with the great writer Horton Foote. We made the movie, shot the movie. It went to the Cannes Film Festival, did well there. I came back from the festival, and then, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do? I got to, you know, so my agent started sending me on some auditions, and I went to meet Spielberg for something. But he asked me what I'd been up to, and I said, well, I just got back from the festival, and you know, my movie was shown over there. It did really well with John Malkovich and everything like that. And he said, would you show it to me? And I'm like, yeah, I'll show it to you. So he invited me to come to his house and show him the film. So I walked in, Kate Capshaw, me, and Spielberg. He's got a movie theater at his house, and he's got a little lobby with a popcorn machine and stuff like. So you walk in the little lobby, you get your popcorn, you go into the theater, and you watch movies. He said he really loved it. He encouraged me to keep directing, and I do remember. Okay, I'm leaving. This is it. You know, I'm not going to see him again. What do I ask him? And I do remember the one question I asked him before I left. I said, can I ask, before I go, can I ask? I said, how do you know where to put the camera? You know, because Spielberg just, you know, he knows where to put the camera, right?
Yeah.
And I remember all he said, he goes, I just watched a lot of movies.
It's incredible.
That's what he said. And it's true. I mean, he did watch a lot of movies. So he watched where the camera was, how the camera was moving around, when the close-up is, where the angles are. He watched every movie you could think of as a kid.
You mentioned your dad earlier as a film editor, and I believe he edited Of Mice and Men, right?
He did.
What was it, that father-son, director-editor tandem, what was that like? What were the highs? What were the lows? What was the dynamic?
It was great. I mean, I loved being able to ask my dad to cut that film. Yeah. And you know, he's a very good editor. And it was kind of interesting. He used to make me do things like, you know, cut the grass and all of that.
For sure.
And now I could just hand him a bunch of notes and say, you know, I need these by tomorrow, Dad, so you better get them done.
Yeah.
And I'll see you later. And then I'd leave, and he'd have to do all the editing, you know, to get it ready for tomorrow. So he was working for me at that point. But he did a great job. You know, if you look at the movie today, and it came, like I said, it came out in '92. So, you know, 30 some years ago. If you look at it today, you know, it's kind of a universal story. I shot it in a very kind of there's nothing that dates it, you know.
Yeah.
Really, in the filmmaking style, it's a very kind of straightforward, you know, approach. And the movie holds up beautifully.
Yeah.
It does. So Dad did a great job.
I have many friends that rewatch it regularly, every couple of years.
Yeah, and I'll still get sometimes from classes in high school and whatnot.
Exactly.
They'll write to me.
That's where I first saw it, was in high school.
Yeah, that's, they're still showing, whenever they teach of Mice and Men, they usually follow it with a screening of the movie.
Yeah.
And so a lot of kids have seen that movie. Far more people have seen it in high school as part of a class project than ever saw it in the theater when it came out.
Does that have a different type? I mean, you obviously are proud of the work, and box office is one thing, but when you get people years later, continuing to talk about this movie and continuing to watch it in high school, is that a different type of maybe satisfaction that you have in looking back at your work, that it still resonates?
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have, the same thing with Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump just holds up. Everybody, new generations of people are seeing it. I mean, every Halloween I get a gazillion pictures of Lieutenant Dan and Forrest, from people.